This might take a while.
This is not good.
Well, I know it's supposed to be delayed. I just don't know how long the delay is. So I don't know when we'll know is my point.
Oh.
And then everyone will
It says live now.
And then everyone will hear all of this.
Cool.
Oh, nice. There we go.
I think we could clip the beginning of this on the podcast.
You think so? You don't think people want to hear this?
No, I don't think so.
And we're live. Okay. Welcome everybody to Soccerwise. We are live right now on YouTube and Twitch, confirmed because we just watched ourselves be live on YouTube and Twitch for 10 seconds while we waited to start this show. David Goss and Tommy Scoops, Tom Boger here for your Soccerwise Tuesday MLS edition, USMNT edition, US Open Cup, whatever we choose to talk about in soccer, that's what we do on this show. It is our first live show of the week. It is our first full week of content. If you missed it, you probably don't need to go back at this point because we're going to talk about a lot of it. But I came out with an episode yesterday morning, our weekend recap. We were going to do that every weekend. I will hit you with a pod as early as possible, either on Sunday night or on Monday, so that you have something to digest the weekend of MLS and NWSL action. For the most part, we've got Copa America coming up, so that might throw a little bit of a wrinkle in there as well. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So that show will be available to you wherever you get your podcasts. This show will be available wherever you get your podcasts as well. I believe we are everywhere. I'm not 100% sure, but I've worked on it. I have gone through the battles, and it feels like everyone has told me back, yes, you are available on our platforms, but you can never be sure. And if you are not watching live, you can go back and watch us on YouTube and on Twitch afterwards because you got to see Tom's shirt. That's the draw for the show, is always coming to see Tom's shirt. Tom, you delivered once again.
It's summertime, baby. Summertime's a mindset. Gonna have my little touristy Cancun mug as well. I'm looking at the beach through my window, but you know what I want to look at? Your sweaty face. It just makes me happy. That's what I want.
You already see the sweat? My plan's
I saw
not
a couple
working?
beats. When it was like immediately when you turned off your fan, I thought in my head, I wonder what the timeline is here, and then I saw just one. I thought it's the top of your fan.
Yeah, it is. Well, I don't know today. I think it's about 87 in New York. I live on the top floor of a 300-year-old four-floor walk-up, and I don't have central air or AC. So when the fan is off and the show
Or
is
a
on,
beach right next to you like me.
the sun is beating. Yeah, the East River is pretty close to me. So after this, I can go for a quick swim.
You'll grow a third arm.
And dive around in there, exactly. And then I would be the fastest swimmer on the river if I do grow that third arm. So we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to have a lot to talk about every episode, but we're going to have a lot to talk about, I think, over the course of the next month or so, Tom, because transfer window's open. So there's rumors, there's connections, there's a bunch going on. We've got a lot of injury and international players as well that are missing. So that's something that we're going to have to monitor as we go into these weeks. Coming off the weekend into a full midweek of MLS action, 2 NWSL games this weekend as well. So a lot going on, a lot to talk about, and a lot of fun to be had. Tom, we're going to start, though, with a little Euro stuff. I'd like for you to just out loud read me the starting lineups for Georgia and Turkey in order, and I'd like you to nail every pronunciation as I get a package right here. Hang on one sec. And you can go start.
I thought that was a landline, and I was like, please tell me David Goss has a landline that is so perfect. That's what I was looking for. No, I'm not going to list off the starting lineup for those games. I was wanting to watch that game. It's very disappointing. I don't have Fubo, unlike David Goss, because apparently I'm not a big enough professional to have Fubo. So, no, I didn't get to see that game, and I'm just refusing to see that there's any lineups out there anyway. Names? Yeah, there's just if I can't watch the game, there's no lineups. It's just not there.
Well, I know your pronunciations for Georgian and Turkish names are on point. So I look forward to that. We are going to preview the midweek coming up. We're going to talk about some of the big performances of the weekend as well as we go through that. And we're going to talk about all the big news. I think the biggest ones right now, Columbus and St. Louis just executed a trade. Aziel Jackson going from St. Louis to Columbus for $650,000 in guaranteed allocation money that can go up to $900,000. So we'll dig into that as well as preview those games. The Kai Wagner comments, of course, are going to be big from this weekend. His talk about Philadelphia maybe needing to reinforce, maybe needing to change that lineup a little bit as well. Ezequiel Ponce, who you broke the news on last week here on this show, has officially signed as the new DP center forward for Houston as well. 2-2 draw at Atlanta, a good performance for them. So we'll talk about that. But I want to start with a team that's not playing midweek, but I thought was one of the biggest comments of the weekend. Xherdan Shaqiri with Switzerland said that he would like to go back to Europe. So you can take that in a lot of different ways. I don't think he meant vacation, and I don't think he meant just for a Euros camp. Tom, what did you make of this when you first heard it? What's your reaction?
Yeah, it's obvious. I think that the Chicago Fire weren't disappointed to hear it. It's what they want as well. My first takeaway was, Shaqiri saying, I want to return to Europe. Chicago, if they were on the other side of this press conference, would have probably piped in with, hey, we want you to return to Europe too, right? So this is good. Both parties are on the same page. But with big money involved, we'll see exactly how that can happen. There were other quotes from that press conference that I've been trying to track down. Apparently, Shaqiri wasn't so thrilled with everything in Chicago, which, hey, man,
He's not thrilled?
It's not great with he leaves and they go on this is the best they've looked all season, the 4 games he hasn't played. So not exactly ideal for your boy's brand there. Xherdan Shaqiri, let's see. I mean, he awakes from slumber for the European Championship, so I wouldn't, say all that much when coming to this. But for right now, Shaqiri, it's not looking great for you either. So, guys, for me, it comes down to money. I think if I'm the Chicago Fire, I'm just printing the transcript of this press conference where he said, I want to return to Europe. Oh, do you want to return to Europe? Then, let's find a solution. And if he's saying, I want you to buy me out because I want to get every dollar, and to be fair, I'm pro player, get your money, son. I don't blame you at all. But how badly do you want to return to Europe? Is it, I want to return to Europe but also get every dollar in this contract? Or, I've made plenty of money in my career and particularly plenty of money from the Chicago Fire. Let's figure out a solution where we can both get out of this deal and start anew.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned it yesterday. I thought that's the most likely scenario. There's no one in the world that's paying Shaqiri the rest of this contract for what this contract is worth for the player he is. You mentioned his national team performance. Didn't play for Switzerland against Hungary. So a guy who had been a locked-in starter doesn't start. They're only up 2-1 in the second half. It was a good game. They played really well. They're struggling. He's not the guy that comes off the bench. So, he's already changed there. And if the hope was, he'll do his Switzerland thing in a big competition, and that will lead to the transfer, I think he has to get that out of his mind, and I think Chicago has to get that out of his mind. There's no way someone pays for the transfer for him on something close to this contract. So they can agree to a deal, which I think makes the most sense. Like you said, they walk into the room with those comments and say, if that's what you want, then this is how you control it. But on the flip side, I think for Chicago fans, and this is what I said yesterday, if you want to talk about being a big spending team and Mansueto has spent big, this is where you do it. These are the unsexy ways in which you say, okay, we're going to be competitive no matter what. We messed up. We are stuck in this deal. We have a get out of jail free card, and we can do it this way. You don't want to use the buyout because they have other guys that they have to get off their books. And that's why it's not so obvious. Because MLS teams, it's 2 buyouts now?
Yeah.
So they have
sorry, guys, that hasn't been officially confirmed. Oh. So it's the same thing with the 3 DPs for the 4-2 GAM stuff. 2-4 GAM, sorry. I know Weeby's listening. Weeby came up with that an extra time, and I love it, and I've completely stolen it. That hasn't all been confirmed yet. And one thing I heard is that the thing that was getting that they had to keep talking through was the buyout stuff because the PA has to sign off on all of this. So it has to be sorted within the next few weeks and announced. But the idea is that there's going to be 2 buyouts, but that isn't confirmed. And again, I know that's super boring, hair splitting here. That's what everyone's here for.
But if there's only one, it matters because I think Shabilko was bought out this season. So
was he bought out? Or what was the language in that press release? I thought that it was more effectively a buyout, but I thought it was technically a transfer to Lugano. But again, I don't remember. There's been a lot of deals like that. But yeah, as you said, so Suke, they've been trying to get rid of since the winter. Gaston Jimenez, despite signing him to 2 new contracts, they've been trying to get rid of him this entire time, which I would say, if I could consult for the Chicago Fire, maybe don't sign that new contract, and you won't have to try to get rid of him. But
sure.
So between Shaqiri is first and foremost because of the DP spot, then there's Gaston Jimenez, and then Arnaud Suke. Those are 3 players that they're trying to get rid of, which would free up significant space. Again, one would be a DP spot, and the other 2 would be significant salary cap. So Chicago could be super fun this summer. They really could be. Again, they spent $12 million plus another 2 in add-ons for Hugo Kuipers. He's looking like a very good signing. But he's somebody who I think we'll see the best of him with chance creators around him.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get the high-level chance creator, unlikely, without that DP spot from Shaqiri leaving. And they could add 2 DPs if Shaqiri leaves.
So confirmation, thanks Jose Nunez in the chat. And we're also going to grab some of your quotes from later when we talk Philadelphia. It was a transfer, so they do still have the buyout available to them. But you mentioned the laundry list of players. I don't believe they have also an open roster spot. So to move anyone into the team, they'd have to move someone out. You'd think it starts with Shaqiri, but even if it doesn't, to try and fill DP spots, to try and fill contract spots, they have to move players on. It is an interesting moment to do this because they have played well. So, like, outside of Shaqiri, it's not super obvious where to make moves and what to do. My thought would be
it's not obvious, guys?
Well, it is, but you look at a moment where Haile Selassie comes off a goal. Fabian Herbers is playing well. I think Jonathan Dean's been awesome. And has locked his spot in. I actually thought Suket looked okay as a side center back in the last game. And you look at this team and you say, okay, Tehran, if he's there, is locked in as a center back. I think at this point, you have to look at things and say Pineda's locked in as one of these center backs. This is like the role he was born to play as a half center mid, half center back.
Yeah,
as a wide guy, and he scores the goal in the last game as well. And then you have Shihos, who I don't think fits this formation as well, but you paid a lot of money, and he is a natural center back. So I just say that in saying this is the best Suket's played his entire time there. This is the best Aragone's played
high bar to clear
his entire time there. That is very fair. So you could just swap all these unknowns and maybes out for just good soccer players, and then not have to worry about anything, and then not have to do it as well. It will be interesting going forward. My guess would be you go second forward, which is what Shaqiri should be in this team.
10.
Just
no. I disagree. It should be a chance creating 10. And maybe if you can get goals from that player too, like Carlos Hill, chance creator, right? But he can score some goals.
But in your mind, it's 5-3-2 or 5-4-1.
The 3-4-2-1, the Nancy ball that is kind of starting to take over a little bit more and more. Like having the proper number 9 of Hugo Kuipers, and then the 2 players underneath can be any combination of things. Like it could be Gutierrez, and then like you said, it could be a second forward. But I really think the way to get the best out of what's around them is a pure chance creator. And if you can get goals from that player, that's great too. But when you're doing your profiles, when you're sorting through with data or scouting everything and looking at numbers and watching players, first and foremost, this has to be a chance creator for me. And I think if you can get goals or 1v1 dribbling on top of that, verticality on top of that, that's cool. But chance creation has to be the bare minimum.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And like, you're not looking for a second Kuipers. You're looking for the guy that drops in deep, creates, sets up chances. That's their number one role. But I think it's going to look more like 2 in the front, which is sort of what we've seen with Haile Selassie over the last few weeks, where like Gutierrez is a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
The other thing is Kellen Acosta needs a partner. Like Kellen is not covers every blade of grass and dominates the game type guy. He's very good in MLS. He is not elite in those ways, and very few guys are. And so you look at a situation where that's the other spot they need to fill. The Gaston Jimenez player, they need a real player who can do the things that they want him to do. So they need to fill multiple holes. They need to do it with not a ton of roster flexibility. And I would look at the quality that they do have, quote unquote, and wonder their futures of like Carlos Tehran made the comments about wanting to go to Europe. He said in the course of that interview, like that's everyone's goal, but like that might be all you have that people want. And you may not be correct. And you might not be in a situation where you get to choose. So it might be, like we have to give up players we like and want to get some openings and get some flexibility. I would look at a few teams in MLS that might be willing to take a wing back from you. Seattle might be one of them. Alex Roldan with the concussion injury. Nuhu's been up and down. They've had injuries as well with Baker Whiting. Like that might be a team where can you just offload a player? You don't even need to get much for them just to open up roster spots.
No, I totally agree. And with Tehran, like, I think that's still the goal for both parties. Like, I know it was in January, and then Tehran got hurt, so that makes it a little bit more difficult with transfers. But I think if a reasonable offer comes this summer Chicago and then Tehran are both interested in. I think that would happen. For all of the, again, it sounds like, we are being pretty critical of some of the things that Chicago has done in the past, and rightfully so, but one thing they've been very good at is transitioning players to Europe. Even their air quote bad players, like Ali Seda has been good for Lugano, right? Like they've obviously
starts every game for Poland.
Yeah.
It is
so, like,
wild.
Again, like we are right to be critical, but I do want to say that, like, say in the situation of Tehran, like that's not a place where we can be critical of them. They've absolutely earned the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah.
And again, like, hope springs eternal, right? We'll see what happens with the open DP spots and everything else if they are able to get out of Shaqiri's deal, and then continue moving forward. But again, for me, like, it's pretty obvious what they need in terms of that chance creator and attack to play with Kuipers, or again, maybe if it is a second forward. Again, you could try to talk me into that. I'd probably see the light, but again, that's not exactly where I'd see it. And then again, I guess defensive additions as well, particularly if Tehran does go, then you take a lot of, I think, that salary cap budget that opens up with a couple of these guys leaving, and just try to go get an anchor center back. And that's much easier said than done. I think that's much more elusive than finding a DP forward in this league, because most all teams try not to use their DP spots there. So again, like, I could see Chicago using that second DP spot on a 6. I'd prefer that over a center back, but if you were like, we found an excellent center, we know he's going to be great.
Watch FC in the chat literally just listed 8 players and was like, we just need a better version of all these players.
Which is
to our point. The one thing I'd say on center back is I would say you go for the 6, because they're more versatile depending what formation you play. Also,
and they impact more people around them.
And you can cover, if you're playing 3 center backs, you have Pineda already, you're probably stuck with Shios. You could probably cover for that position the way you play tactically and formation wise, more so than covering for a lack of quality or lack of ground coverage in central midfield, or for a lack of pure chance creation in the attack. So that's probably the future for Chicago. They do not play this week. As you mentioned, they've been awesome since Shaqiri left for Euros. A 4-1 win this week over TFC, a very thin TFC squad. No Bernadeschi. They're missing Osorio. They're missing Richie Larea for international. Sean John as well. So it's not like the purest performance you've seen, but it comes on the back of the win over the Galaxy. And it was, again, I thought, a really strong performance in bend but don't break defending and some good chance creation, especially Fabian Hermers, who, again, will not lose you MLS games, and he will win you some MLS games as well if you put him in the lineup often and not enough. To Michael as well as to Adrian, yes, we do check the chat. We have them up in both Twitch and YouTube as we roll along. Let's go into our next one.
Guys, can we go a little bit meta right now? And I'm sorry for in the chats, please let us know what you kind of want. And I guess podcast listeners, just let us know retroactively. Like, do you want us to be going into the chat? Because my thought is, what about the people listening on podcasts?
Agreed.
Like, make sure that we're repeating what the comments are when we address them. But like, I think we can find a little blend for that. So I like that, Goss. But it's just trying to go meta here, that you guys are helping shape the show that we're trying to make, because we're figuring it out as well. As you see, we got YouTube up. That's a step in the right direction. We're always improving. If you start at a low base level, everything's up, and everything's all relativity. And as long as we're going in the right direction, even if we started a little bit low on the technical side, you guys can help us.
I also appreciate a lot of the advice I've gotten just from people in the community who have hit me up and been like, oh, you should mark it as this, make it this length, do this, do that. Someone hit me up about making a website, a Seattle Sounders fan from Portland, Maine, who I lost the chat in moving between 2 Instagrams. So if you want to hit me up again, I would love to talk to you. If not, then we'll be lost, and I will platform Tom wherever I can find a spot to do it.
Real quick, on that stuff, people saying nice things to you. The nice things that people have said to me about the show, it's all about you. Like, I've had sources text me, and it's been like, hey, congrats on the new show. I'm so happy to hear David Goss's voice again. It goes, congrats to you guys. Immediately, I love David Goss. And I'm like, do you want his number?
Yeah, tell them to text me, because I like to hear nice things. Also, because my wife will always be like, who's texting you? And if I turn around and be like, oh, it's someone saying something nice, it's always a little bit better. Also, by the way, happy birthday to my wife. It was yesterday. Hence the nice flowers as well. And the wrapping paper, whatever, that was all over my living room, because she opened her gift and then didn't touch a single piece of what it came in to throw it away. And it was like the purest child reaction to a gift that you can have. So shout out to her as well. And birthday week in my household is finally over which is my favorite part of birthday week. I already have the lower third up if you're watching live. So you know what we're going to talk about now. Let's talk Columbus Crew, because this was the big trade here today that we want to dig into. So Aziel Jackson traded to Columbus for $650,000 in allocation. So that's going to be half this year and then half next year guaranteed. Then an extra $250,000 is possible to take it up to $900,000 based off performances. And St. Louis retains a portion of his sell-on fee if Columbus sell him under whatever contract status it goes from here. Let's start on the Columbus side, because that's the exciting part with this. You watch St. Louis this weekend, and Jackson was the most active player on the field. He covers all over the field. He's comfortable inside. He's comfortable outside. He's comfortable in space. He's comfortable with defenders around him. He wants to take players on. Like, this is a no-brainer for Columbus. And I don't think it's an Aiden Morris replacement. I just think it makes this team deeper and better.
Yeah, like I'll just say pretty obviously it's not an Aiden Morris replacement. They don't play the same position. It's more about opportunity, and this is a player that they've liked for a long time. I was talking to folks around reporting out this trade that Columbus really liked him before he went to St. Louis. So when his minute he was getting minutes in MLS Next Pro, I believe, with Minnesota, and that's when they first spotted him, and they really liked him. St. Louis ends up getting the deal. He kills it for St. Louis in Next Pro before they went to MLS, gets a deal there, and then they've kept tabs on him ever since. He had his breakout season last year, and now they're able to find a deal for a really talented rising young player. Like, if we were talking in January, hey, AZ Jackson gets traded this year, one, we'd say, I don't really see a scenario in which that happens. And two, in January, you probably say it's got to be 1.5 million maybe, 100%. And then a big sell on if he goes abroad. I think we were all of the opinion that he was gonna have a big year, and then if he leaves, it'd go abroad. If you again reporting out this trade, asking around, trying to find out the details, I was like, all right, I'm assuming the only way St. Louis would let him go is if it's a big deal, like got to be $1 million or something, right? So to find out that they paid $650,000, like that's, it's still a good turn for St. Louis, not what I would have expected. And like the sell on is important because Columbus will bring players abroad. If I'm AZ Jackson, obviously I'm probably surprised at how this happened. I know that he loved it in St. Louis. Again, he's had some really good moments over the last year and a half. My next thought would be, so I'm going to go play for Columbus, where every single attacker under Wilfried Nancy in the last 3 years have had their best season ever. All right. I got my bags. Don't worry. I can get myself to the airport. I'll see you guys later, right? Like what a recruitment tool that must be for Isatal, the Columbus Crew, to be like, hey, you go get young attacker, you go get to play for Wilfried Nancy. Sweet. Sign me up. I'm in.
Let me give some context here. Aaron Herrera, I think one of the best fullbacks in Major League Soccer over the last 5 years, not over the last 2 years. The trade this year for him to go from Montreal to DC was $500,000 allocation plus Huan. Sort of the same that you're looking at here. And that's a player that you're not going to sell in the future. Didn't have as good a year last year.
And on a worse contract. Good players cost money is what I want to say. Yeah. I don't want to say it's a bad contract, but that, like Bill Tuiloma, when he was like $800,000, it was because he was on a really good contract.
Right.
And so it was like, if he was being paid $200,000 more, this trade would have been $200,000 less, right? Like, so that always comes into it as well. And AZ Jackson isn't on a big deal.
Yeah, and so they're not the same player. They're not in the same situation. It's just trying to give you the context of like why we're shocked by this number for this player, because this is a player that you look at and you say, at what he has going on currently and in the future, you have to be in the higher ends of $1 million to $2 million in a conversation in allocation money to bring this player in. Also with the assumption, if you're St. Louis, saying like, we know you just sold Aiden Morris, we know the money's there, now it's time to give it to us. And historically, MLS teams struggle in moments like that, like expansion teams. They always have to overpay because everyone knows that they have the allocation money and they want that to be a part of this team. St. Louis has been telling us for a year that Bundesliga teams are banging their door down. If he's that close to a move and that number is anywhere close to what we think it could be, and I'm saying like, it doesn't have to be in the millions. If it was 500,000, there's no chance you probably get 500,000 out of the percentage you're giving Columbus in this. So it's very confusing from the outside. You throw Jackson in here and you said it, like, he will fit perfectly into what Nancy wants to do. He obviously has a ton of experience now in counter pressing where he's been really good. That's an element that he can bring to this team that Columbus, not that they don't do it, they do it, but he will do it at an even higher level than some of the pieces in their team. It also just gives them more minutes. With the way Columbus is set up in that everyone can play 3 positions, no matter what happens to injuries or internationals or whatever, now you have another player you can slide in and slide someone else around and move someone around. Matan can become a wing back if you have to. You can slide Zawadzki around and bring Jackson in a little deeper for moments late in games. You can move whoever else, basically besides Nagbe. Anyone on this team can move around positions. Jackson's versatile. He does all of those things. And as I said, I think his soccer fits. I think he wants the ball in and out of his feet quickly. I think he doesn't mind having players around him, especially on his first and second touch, to try and beat them. And that's what Columbus does so well. And so he's going to have to work on link-up play, and he's going to have to work on being a part of those passing patterns as he joins a new team. But it feels like a no-brainer. It feels like a big moment for Columbus in saying they've won a lot of moves over the last 18 months, and Bezbatchenko leaves. And the question is just, okay, can they continue to do that? And this feels like an early one, Tom, of being like, Columbus is still on the same road.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I know that we talked last week about, so Bez is out, Corey Ray's out, Neil McGinnis, all of those 3 left in the last few months. Issa Tall's been here the whole time. Mark Nichols has been here the whole time. Wilfred Nancy, I'm sure, just by way of numbers, with losing 3 people from the front office, I'm sure that he's growing in stature and importance. And again, as his pedigree and resume should dictate. So this is still the same DNA for the Columbus Crew. Again, particularly with Issa Tall and Mark Nichols leading in the front office. So it's not surprising to me that they're going to try to do the similar things that they did under Bez. And you look at this attack now, Dylan Shambost is also being signed, right? And maybe this means he's going to play more number 8 than I maybe expected right when he signed. But this attack, it's got at center forward, you can play Cucho, Jason Russell-Rowe, Christian Ramirez. At that second forward, it's Rossi, and then it's Jackson or Heinz Strosa, or again, Cucho can play there if you have a more traditional 9. And then an attacking mid, it's okay, then if Cucho's playing as a second forward, it could be Rossi, it could be Matan, it could be Shambost, it could be Jackson, it could be Heinz Strosa. That's going to be really difficult to get all these guys minutes, but what this team wants is positional versatility and fluidity. They had one of the smallest rosters in the league. So it doesn't seem that way because everybody outside of Rudy Camacho maybe and Darlington Nagbe maybe can play multiple positions. Everybody else essentially can. And even with those 2 players, Camacho can play different roles in the back line. Christian Ramirez probably has to be center forward, but he can drop in and play. Everybody on this team can play different ways. And so there's a lot of different players, but they can fill a lot of different roles. So I trust Nazi to get the most out of these guys, to get the minutes. Look, hell, Christian Ramirez and Julian Gressel weren't starting games at the end of the playoff run last year. Both of those 2 dudes were absolutely bought in the whole time, and they were playing roles off the bench. So if there's anybody who could try to keep everybody happy, it's probably Wilfred Nancy.
And I think if you're Columbus, you're trying to cover for the minutes you had to put into CONCACAF, which historically kills teams in the second half of seasons, as well as be ready for the playoffs, especially if, maybe outside of Aiden Morris, there are more moves that come just because you've been successful and teams are looking at you and potential transfers pop up and you never know what happens. It's the type of player you already want to get in. And I think Columbus has done a good job as well of when you look at some of these players, you look at the Mo Farsis, the Jason Russell-Rose, Max Arfsons, players like this that are continuing to bridge this gap as they hope the academy gets to where they want it to be, where Dallas a few years ago could sell a player and then just replace. Columbus not there yet. Taha Bruin's not there yet. Those pieces aren't there yet. So you can continue to do this. So Columbus, I mentioned it yesterday. They play Miami this week. Miami coming off the insane comeback at Philadelphia with 9 players, winning it in stoppage time. But that does mean Aviles and David Ruiz are suspended, as well as all of their injuries and all of the players they're missing. Before we dig into this game, let's talk Miami a little bit, because this is right in your wheelhouse. I'm going to try and stay with you on this. They named a new head of presidents of both their business and football side today, which the football side, the interesting part, because no one cares about money or business, means that this is a new point person who's making all the soccer decisions for this club.
Yes. So that's the way that I understand his move. This person was previously, he was running Arsenal and Barcelona. He was the head of football, director of football, both of those clubs. And he was recently with Zaragoza, which is also owned by Jorge Mas. I'm going to probably butcher the last name, Raul Sanelli. I think I've got that right. That's why I said this person. I was just trying to gather the confidence to try to pronounce his name. So yeah, he comes in as look, he's top of the food chain in Inter Miami sporting department now. And the way that he tried to sell it, he used a quote that was, I'm just the orchestrator. I like to view my role as an orchestrator. You have the piano and you have the flute. And it sounded really good, right? And then I was talking to a colleague at The Athletic from Europe, and he's like, oh my God, I interviewed him 2 years ago when he started at Zaragoza. He gave me almost the exact same quote. So he knows what he's doing in interviews, I guess, and so that would make me a little bit dubious of this guy. Mark Prezant, who is their head of scouting, chief scout, director of scouting, whatever his exact title was, he's out. There's probably going to be further. Look, if you're Chris Henderson, man, and again, Sinelli in an interview with Paul Tenorio tried to reiterate, I've met Chris, I like Chris, I want to work with Chris, all of this. But you've heard that plenty of times in these scenarios. I think the writing's on the wall for Chris Henderson. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that this was the case previously, and I like more so on his side of things, and this was more me talking to people who were deducing as well, so nothing like completely concrete, but so I know ownership does they did the Messi deal, right? And it's not like Chris Henderson was going to be like, well, actually, I don't know if we should sign Lionel Messi, right? But those big deals, Messi, Busquets, Alba, Suarez, all that comes from ownership and Messi. And now Messi, I've heard Messi is the one leading. If they end up signing Di Maria, agent Messi is the one working on it, right? So Chris Henderson isn't getting to do some of those big deals. The medium deals, Tata Martino, because of his resume, everything, he's earned having some semblance of control. He has a lot of control on those mid-level signings, like Weingarten at the right. A lot of the U22s, Tata helped a lot with. Again, these are good problems to have. So at the end of the day, Chris Henderson, who's done, I think, a fantastic job with Miami before and after Met. He got dealt a bad hand with the sanctions and a lot of bad contracts from his predecessor, and he did really well. So right now, what exactly is his role? What does he lead? Is it, hey, by the way, we just agreed a deal for Di Maria. Figure out the cap, make it work. Right? He's better than this. He's earned more than this. So, and if I'm Atlanta, I'm calling him. I'm Garth. Hey, man, let's get the band back together, right? I don't know that there's anything immediate. I want to preface again, this is mostly speculation, plus a little bit from what I've been talking about with people. But all of those conversations are happening from people that aren't at Miami. I could be wrong. Chris Henderson could say the more the merrier. I trust him. I believe that I'm still going to be the head of charge, for day-to-day kind of stuff. Again, this could be completely wrong. But from what I've talked about with people and just kind of being around this for long enough, that'd be my best guess, and I feel pretty decent about it.
It's an interesting way to view it, because I think from the outside, the first reaction is this is the show, right? This is the Once a Time in New York documentary coming out in 50 years about Pele, Cosmos, and you want to be in it. You want to be a part of it. Do you really leave this? Even if your role is not the role that you hope it is, and even if it's not the role you deserve. Because I think for the starting point, for anyone who doesn't know, Chris Henderson was the architect of a lot of what went right in Seattle over the last 10 years. Then he comes to Miami. Miami is a mess. And I've said this a million times. 2 years ago, Miami were not bad. They made the playoffs in the second half of that year.
They had no business making the playoffs. No business other than what Henderson did.
He didn't have a DP spot open to him that he could use long term because they were saving it for Messi. He drafted 2 center backs that started for them. He went out and signed players that no one else wanted. He brought in pieces like Bryce Duke and all of that. He put together a lot of that. And then now this year, after all you've said of the Moss and Messi's are doing these signings, Tata's doing these signings, they just beat Philadelphia in stoppage time, down 2 players on 2 draft picks that he made. So even now, with the way the roster is, the parts that he's in charge of that we can identify from the outside are hitting and keeping this team alive. This roster is able to stay in a conversation for Supporter Shield without Suarez and Messi consistently and without all these injuries, blah, 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 because Campagna and Ryan Taylor and all of these, Robert Taylor, sorry, all these pieces that help them that are part of this group, that he's built out this roster and made it deeper. Trey Callender, goalkeeper of the year, are you kidding me? In a situation where this guy comes in not really being known, they get him on a homegrown deal, all this stuff are huge moves. So it's, I guess in my mind, that's the way I thought of it first, was you don't really leave this thing. Atlanta's a huge one to bring up because he worked with Garth. They obviously liked working together, but he did leave to become in charge of a thing. So you're right in he's not right now. It's weird to think, is Atlanta, if you are CSO in Atlanta, are you in charge of things? Is that Garth's show and you're working under him? Or is it doesn't matter because you're CSO and that's your job and that's where you want to go. If this is in any way real, there should be 9 teams in MLS picking up the phone. Sorry, there should really be 27 teams in MLS probably picking up the phone. Maybe you could convince me a few you wouldn't do. Although with Bez leaving Columbus, maybe one of those came back into the conversation. But like, if Toronto could get him to do it instead of Bill Manning touching things and keep control. Maybe David Lee's one you wouldn't. NYCFC have done so well. Ernst Tanner's done so well. John Thorrington. But like, there are a lot of teams where, one, most people you talk to say he has the best eye for talent in the U.S. soccer pool. So like, whatever he does in your club, you're going to be bringing in good players. And he's clearly shown in Miami that he understands how to work a cap, make moves, hit against opportunities that you don't really have. I mean, they've had the sanctions, everything, and they've still been competitive the whole time. But this is Messi show. So it is a little bit different right now than what we are used to. So Miami, Columbus this week on Wednesday night, full slate of games on Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. This one kicks things off. So as I mentioned, Aviles, David Ruiz suspended. Messi, Suarez, Rojas are with international. Redondo still out. So a depleted Inter Miami team. On the show yesterday, I made the case, Columbus. They are 11 points behind Miami for Supporters Shield lead with 4 games in hand. This starts some of that run. And they won MLS Cup last year that they are both in this, and this should be their focus. What do you make of my take?
I love that. Yeah, and I would say that's been my view this whole time. Like, I'll talk about power rankings or I'll talk about all this. Like, I think that they're absolutely in the mix. And now, like, again, we're talking about how deep and how versatile they are, that, like, they don't have many irreplaceable players. Even, like, again, like, Cucho and Nagby are probably that. But even with Cucho out, like, they were getting results. So I still think that this is, like, at the end of last year, everything we were talking about this Columbus Crew team, that's how I view them right now. And I don't really care where they're technically listed in the standings because, like you said, they have a lot of games in hand. And they had a lot of games where they were focused on CONCACAF Champions Cup correctly, I would add. And now they've got the rest of the season to just steam up the table. And I think that they're absolutely one of the teams of the Shield.
Yeah, Cincinnati on points per game, I think, could stretch the lead at the top a little bit, but you're in the conversation if you want to be, as I die here.
And why wouldn't you want to be?
In New York, yes. So huge opportunity for Columbus still. That's going to be a really fun one to watch midweek. Let's go over to the St. Louis side of things. We didn't really touch on them with the Aziel Jackson trade. Like I mentioned a little bit, St. Louis has said Bundesliga teams want him. This is a huge prospect. He's played a ton of minutes for you at a high level. Now let's go try and explain this from this side, which is not the value we thought on an allocation that they would recoup for this, and then you don't have the opportunity to sell him overseas yourself. What are you reading on the tea leaves here of like St. Louis's side of this?
For me, it's more about looking forward. It made me immediately call somebody in St. Louis, and I was like, does this mean that the Marcel Hartle deal is done? And they're confident it's going to get done. I mean, at time of speaking right now, I haven't gotten a confirmation that anything is done, but I'm pretty heavily expecting that deal for Marcel Hartle to get done. And this would be a really great start to their offseason. Again, I'm very surprised. I thought Jackson was still going to be part of this, but Cedric Teuchert, deal's already done. He's going to be ready to debut on their first game after the transfer window opening on July 18th, and he'll have several weeks of training under his belt, and he'll be able to play 90 minutes if they want. And then Marcel Hartle, who had 17 goals and 13 assists for St. Pauli as they won the 2 Bundesliga this year, but he's a free agent. That would be an excellent signing, and he's a DP level signing. Teuchert is a TAM level signing, who probably would have been a DP level signing if they had to pay a transfer fee. So these are 2 significant additions to the attack in the same way that, like, we didn't know much of anything about João Klaus unless you were super dialed into the Bundesliga or wherever he was on loan before he got here.
Belgian league, the
Swiss league, and same thing with Everett Loven. Like, that was a name a few people knew, kind of in more passing. Oh, wasn't he bought for $7 million a few years ago? Whatever, right? Like, Berkey was the only known commodity to like the average MLS fan, or in terms of, like, coming in last year. And those 3 were excellent signings, excellent signings. So, Teuchert, Hartle get my benefit of the doubt for this team. And all of a sudden, those are 2 new starters. For me, I think that this team, they've been playing a lot of 4-2-3-1, almost exclusively for the most part. So I think that they'll go for a more of a, like, at the box midfield where they have 2 wide attacking midfielders who aren't really wingers because they don't like, they'll tell you that we don't play with traditional wingers, right? Yeah, so I think it'll be Klaus and Teuchert up top, and then Hartle as one of the attacking midfielders with probably Vasilev, or you could push Leuven forward, and Durkin can start with somebody else, like kind of more defensive-minded at the heart of midfield. But this is another team that's going to have a lot of versatility, a lot of options. But the nucleus of Klaus, Teutschert, Hartl, Leuven, Durkin, Vasilev, if that's the starting point, this is a much better team on July 18th than they are today.
Yeah, I guess the part that's hard to figure out is like it doesn't feel like they're in a crunch for the roster spots or the money. Like this is not a team that has like gone out and spent at a crazy level, so you would have thought they could just bring these players in.
Yeah,
without losing Jackson.
I'm kind of surprised there, but again, like they did have a bit of a glut of options there, even with Pompeu getting injured, which is really, really unfortunate and sad that he's out for the rest of the season. And just some other stuff. Somebody asked about Eric Dyer. Oh, my goodness. Their left back Dyer in the chat. My brain is fried. Nicholas Dyer. My God. They don't have Eric Dyer. Nicholas Dyer. Somebody asked about Nicholas Dyer in the chat. I'm told that it is likely that he's going to leave this summer if he doesn't start playing more. And it seems that Bradley Carnell just favors Mark Hanich, who's been good. But they had high expectations for Dyer when they signed him, and they're not going to hold him to like. They know he's better than a backup in MLS. So they'll probably either loan or transfer him out in Europe, again, if he's not playing. So then they'll be in the market for another left back. But, again, that's obviously much lower on the priority list than signing guys like Teutschert and Hartl.
You mentioned it, Pompeo, the collision this weekend. He's out for the season. Got a surgery, I believe, yesterday morning. And they confirmed it's going to be like a 9-month recovery.
Sorry, the chat has let me know that at 2 p.m. they tweeted that Dyer has been sold. Good thing I didn't.
Breaking news. I can't build the graphic fast enough. Otherwise, I would. For all of you listening on the podcast, reminder, we go live 2 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Wednesday is NWSL with Jordan Angeli. If you don't know Jordan Angeli,
somebody asked in the chat, give a full minute on the code.
Jordan actually did a lot of MLS coverage with me as well as just in the league. She's from Denver originally, played professional soccer on her own before getting injured. She actually has a really cool group that works for people on how to deal with ACL injuries and the recovery.
She helped my sister.
So
She helped my sister. My sister's part of the ACL club, yeah.
There you go. So you can go to her socials for that. She is tagged in all of our stuff. And then she was the play-by-play, I believe, and color analyst on radio for Colorado Rapids, then the Columbus Crew, the color analyst on TV, and then she also covers NWSL. And so she is one of the big voices on NWSL week in and week out. If you watch this weekend, I think she called 3 different games. She knows that league better than anyone, and she knows soccer a lot better than most of the people you will talk to about it. So I'm really excited. It'll be our first full show doing that tomorrow. We'll break down all of what happened this weekend on NWSL, preview the weekend or midweek. There's 2 games coming up tomorrow, including one that I'm going to be on. I'm going to be on the MSG broadcast of Gotham against San Diego Wave, my first ever NWSL broadcast and MSG broadcast. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to talk about those teams. We're going to get to talk Jaden Shaw, all of those things. You heard me do a little bit of it already on the Monday show. And then Thursdays we'll be back, 2 p.m. Eastern time, to talk all things MLS as well as on the U.S. side, because Copa America coming up. The U.S. kicks off this Sunday.
Correct.
Canada against Argentina on Thursday night. So we're going to do a bunch about that on Thursday. We're going to talk about, matchups, expectations, rosters, all that type of stuff. We might pull in a guest or two as well for the first time to help us with that. It could be one of our favorites, Michele Giannone, who is on the road once again, following the U.S. and champing at the bit to be get back into the conversation along with us. And we love him, so we're going to do that. And of course, I'm always talking Canada. So anytime we need to talk Canada, I am there. I am ready to go.
We'll get my guy Josh Cloak on the show as well.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm so excited for what Thursday is going to be. So for St. Louis, they kick off on Wednesday night against the Colorado Rapids. The Rapids in this good set of form. We did Thursday's show. We talked Rafa Navarro, who scored again. And it sounds like Sam Vines, their one big question mark, was out with an illness last weekend, and the hope is that he can come back. But Colorado in a really good form. Any of the underlying numbers you look at right now in MLS, Cole Bassett is a massive difference maker. And I actually think in the end, the Georgi Mihailovic injury and slow start to the year is going to be beneficial because Cole Bassett found his feet first, and it's made life easier for Georgie. It's made life easier for all of these players. And I'm excited to see his career trajectory going the way it should have 2 years ago, and like Chris Armas to be the one to do it.
See the smile on my face?
Yeah,
The amount of
why?
extra time shows I sat on as you guys tried to tell me that you didn't think Cole Bassett was as good as I thought he was. Vindicated. Vindicated.
I'm glad. I also don't know that that was me. That was anti-Cole Bassett because I'm a fan, but
I don't know if it was either. It was a lot of people. A lot of people are saying this. I don't know. A lot of people are saying.
It was probably Anders. Anders was probably anti the entire time. Let's go into Philadelphia now because we want to talk about Kai Wagner's comments. FC Cincinnati facing off against Philadelphia on Wednesday night. It's always fun when these two teams match up. 2 years ago, of course, the playoff game, Philly wins. Last year, Cincinnati wins. All the matchups, all regular season, were wild as well. But let's start with the Kai Wagner comments. So, Tom, you helped bring this out after Jose Nunez, I believe, was the one who got the quotes coming out of the game. Talk to me about the timeline of what's happened and sort of what you make of that.
Yeah, first of all, Jose's just excellent on the Philadelphia Union beat. If something happens, he's on it. He does some excellent work. So, yeah, he was at a scrum that Kai Wagner did after the loss to Miami, the very frustrating loss as the players and Jim Curtin and everybody else felt. And Kai just straight up shredded the front office and said, we need to, hopefully they see that this club needs to spend more money. And, like, one of the things he said that was super interesting to me was, like, I'm not even saying it has to be millions and millions of players. So I'm assuming he was saying that he understands we're not going to spend 10 million on like a new center forward. But he like one of the direct quotes was just guys with different profiles. We don't have a single player with pace on the whole field. And then he said like with Julian Carranza leaving for Feyenoord, he's like we don't have a real finisher. Which if I'm Mikel Ura, I'm like, all right, dude. First of all, I'm fast, and you don't think I'm a good fit. This feels like it's directly at Mikel Ura.
Straight at him, yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah, like Kai's frustrated, and like you said, like we can't just rely on young players to like keep doing this. But like, look, man, that's the Philadelphia Union's that's their motto. That's what they want to do. Like this isn't total. Like I'm surprised that the bottom dropped out the way it has, the way that they haven't been good at home, the way that I'm pulling up their expected goals right now. Their expected goal difference is +9, and their real goal difference is +3. Like. Yeah. I still think this is a good team, and I know it's not a great take to be making right now, considering how bad that they've been over the last 10 or 11 games, whatever it is. But, like, I think this is more micro than it is macro. And part of it is Andre Blake wasn't great when he's been available. Now he's gone. The backup goalkeeper is a backup goalkeeper, like, is what it is. So that does lead to underperforming expected goals. Not having a proper center, like a really, really good center forward, that leads to underperforming goal difference. But other than that, like, I don't know. This is just kind of the evolution that happens that this team's been so good for 6 years. And my biggest fear when that Gareth Bale goal went in and they lost in penalties in MLS Cup, I was like, dude, what if this was it? What if the window, like, how many times can you overturn a roster with, a bottom 3 to bottom 5 spend in terms of both salary and I think more importantly with transfer fees and acquisition costs? So, like, they have to keep on making magic. But right now, like, things are pretty bleak, and they've got a month before the transfer window opens. So even if they bring in somebody, they could fall further over the next month.
The scary part with them, and I agree with most of what you said, like the underlying numbers show that this is still a competitive team, but it is a team that already had a weird ceiling on it, and so they were already fighting against that. And if everything's not going your way, it's tough. Is like now that you've lost Carranza, does a lot of that go away? Which is he's a huge chance creator. He's a huge finisher. He's also sort of like the star that a lot of the attack rolls around. You take him off the field, you don't have to account for him as an opposing team. Now you're locked in on Ura. Now you're locked in on Gazdag. Now you're making Quinn Sullivan's life harder. Like, does a lot of that go away, which is the part that's unknown at a time when the window opens. And if you're going to do something, you got to do it now. And I think the frustration, if you're a Kai Wagner, and this one's a little bit harder to say because, like, he got paid and he's been around and he's a part of this. They've sold big with McKenzie and Brendan Aronson and some other smaller pieces as well, and have not fully reinvested it into the first team. So if you are a player who says, okay, we helped Aronson and McKenzie get into the team and get at this level, then we lost them and it wasn't replaced in the same way or better, I think that's a fair complaint. But some of that money has gone to re-sign Kai Wagner and Andre Blake and Jakob Glesnes and whatever. And then a lot of that's going back into the academy is the assumption.
Yes.
From the outside and the facilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, like, to be fair to ownership, like what they point back at the overall spend is that they put a lot of money into the academy and that's paid off dividends. That's very good. But like you said, I think that there's room for both. I think in this version of MLS, so Jim Curtin, I'm going to build off something that Jim Curtin has been saying for years, that like like we shouldn't just be here to develop you. Like, one, why are you here if you're not trying to win? If you're just trying to develop players, like whatever. Like, we want to do both. But he's like, Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie made team of the season. They made best 11 when they won the Shield. Was that 2020? And part of the reason why teams are paying attention, and part of the reason why these players are excelling the way they are, is the structure around them as well. So if you just want to roll out a U23 team, just a developmental team, I don't even think that that's best for youth development or bringing academy players along. So I understand the frustration. Like, one thing that Ernst Tanner says is, when young players come here, we're not going to, just keep signing DPs at your position and block your ever chance. And that's true too. But like you said, there's room in the middle. So let's say they reinvest in a DP center forward or even a DP 10 and make kind of Daniel Gazdag more of a second striker or whatever you want, right? Like, that DP 10 or that DP forward makes players around him better. So for me, I understand why Philly, like Jim Curtin today, I believe he said, Kai was frustrated, and has been at the club for a while. Like, he's a top player at the club, but he also knows speaking publicly doesn't really help anybody. So we've had discussions with Kai kind of about that like, yeah, maybe it's not great to say it out loud. And like you said, it's easy to point back to, well, you're one of the highest paid players in the team, my man. Like, but I think he's been good enough this season. I think he has enough cachet to stand on for this. But like, he has a point. Like, you don't need to sign 3 new DPs, just 1, or like maybe a good TAM player. Or like, I don't understand. Like, I know that they believe in their academy. I thought that they would have signed a U22 initiative player by now, because they believe in young players in general. And like Leon Flock, if he was signed when the U22 initiative was a thing, maybe he would have been. They tried to sign Christopher Lund before he went to Palermo, the U.S. national team left back. He would have been a U22 initiative. So maybe that's something that we could see in the future. But like, there is some room to tick this up for the Philadelphia.
Although Kevin Sullivan might end up just being U22 initiative signing.
Good point, man.
With the way it ends up going for them, which is partially probably
his salary is going to go out of the range to cap at some point.
That's true. Yeah, actually not even available for that. If you had to pick blind right now on June 18th, 2024, on August 19th, 2024, how many ads do you think Philadelphia has made? Just pure numbers at that point to their roster.
Off the Kevin Sullivan, they're talking about advertisements. I was like,
no.
I don't know. What kind of question is this?
Yeah,
you mean billboards?
I'd like your marketing deck delivered immediately.
That's a good question. I don't even think that the total numbers means a ton. I think that they'll add, like, say, 3 players. Right. But like, if it's Marcus Anderson or whatever, again, grabbing somebody not only that we haven't heard of, but from a club in Spain that I haven't heard of. I didn't even think that was possible, that MLS teams were shopping at
I think
at
it's
clubs
one
that
of those clubs that's kind of like a study abroad program where they're like, oh, you want to come? If you apply, like, you get to join this team. I'm actually not 100% kidding about that.
As a proud study abroad kid, that you wanted to do the next 90 minutes of me giving study abroad stories?
Sure.
Did you know that I studied abroad? I have a standing desk. These are 2 things that I think we could build a show around.
I played soccer in Spain in a program that was study abroad that I paid to go be a part of. So I know exactly how this works.
Yeah,
I guess we're done there.
That's
Okay,
all.
cool.
That's all I got on Philly. That's all I got on Philly.
Let's talk Cincinnati here. Matt Miazga had to go out with the game with, I guess, a cut, but a deep one. So he is out injured. He is out for tomorrow night's game 100%. And Pat Noonan's comments were basically, we don't know when he will be back. Miles Robinson is away with the national team. Ian Murphy got cooked by Christian Espinoza in the last game, but he's available. They've obviously added Kip Keller. It's a dangerous moment here for Cincinnati. Corey Baird's supposed to be back. He is back in training. And then we could talk about Aaron Bupenza if you want. He is back in training. Pat Noonan's comments coming out of the San Jose game were that he had just started training around Thursday, and it was too early to bring him to a game to travel away, and that they wanted him to get some more training under his belt. That feels like an easy thing to say now before you have to answer tougher questions if he doesn't work his way back into the team.
Yeah, I'll start with Bupenza because I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, maybe he'll play again. And like, I believe that Pat Noonan's being genuine when he says that, like, when he's available for selection, he'll be available for selection. It's not like, hey man, you've got a month to win your spot back or whatever. Like, that decision's already been made. I'd be shocked if he's here all that much long. Like, whatever they have to do to work out to open that DP spot. I know that they're operating under the assumption that they're breaking into DP, and they're going to try to take some big swings, right? Like, so, yeah, maybe he'll play again, and, like, why not if he's there? And, hey, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world to show teams that are thinking about signing him that, like, hey, his jaw's fixed, he's moving good, like, everything's all right. Like, he's back to normal, right? Like, you're if you acquire him, you're acquiring a player who's ready to go right now. But this isn't, like, a reconciliation thing and trying to come back into the team.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you. I think it's interesting because what if he scores goals? Like, what do you do?
I don't think it changes.
Yeah. What do you do at that point?
I don't think. I mean, I don't think that there's a number of goals that he could score that would change anything. Okay. I really don't.
With Miazga out, the assumption being Kip Keller comes into the team. You've got Hagelin, you've got Murphy, so they've got center back options, but it makes life a little bit easier for the Philadelphia Union as they try and rebound from that brutal loss and try and move back into, deeper playoff conversation, make things feel a little bit safer. Houston facing off against Seattle on Wednesday night. Houston, a really good 2-2 performance on the road against Atlanta. Latif Blessing off the bench. He gets the goal. It's sort of what we talked about last week when you broke the news on Ezequiel Ponce, which was now you have a little bit more flexibility to move guys like that around. So Latif comes off the bench. He could start for you if you need to in a few different spots. Now you're able to move some of the players that have been filling in at center forward back into their natural roles, either on the wing or in central midfield, and have them be a part of things. I think Coco Carrasquilla is going to play in this game and then go back to Panama, was something that I saw. I'm not 100% sure about that. And then on the Seattle side, Pedro de la Vega still out. Schmetzer's comments this week were he has to train one full week before we're going to put him into a live game. So he started training at the end of last week. He could be back this weekend. That feels like you're a cat chasing the thing that someone's spinning around if you want to get there. And then Alex Roldan, obviously a huge question mark. Had to go off the field with the concussion in the last game. Obviously, Christian has dealt with those as well. There's no way he plays on Wednesday night. And then Schmetzer said he has to pass concussion protocol to be available once again. That's just a black box that we don't know anything about. And we don't know how long that will be. And there are question marks. Paul Rothrock came off the bench, played a little bit sort of on that side with Christian sliding deeper and then swapped to the other side and had the second goal in the game. Seattle, I think their issues don't have everything to do with like whether Alex Roldan's available or not for them. Some of their issues seem fixable, and this weekend felt sort of like on the road to fixing them.
Can I just peek behind the curtains as well again, because I want to be as forthright with the audience as I can. David Goss's notes in our rundown, it was of course Pedro de la Vega is still out. That I want to know that was how it was written. I think it's important.
Yeah, it was written that way. I forgot about that as I went through it. DC Atlanta, since our last show, Giacomakis has gone official. I mentioned it yesterday. What should fans be looking at this point?
Big summer. Look, there was, again, Giacomakis is out. They're going to sign a DP forward. There's obviously and whatever smoke that's going to be around Thiago Almada, and that's going to be there unless he signs a new contract, which, again, I know that at every turn they say that that's what they want. That's their ideal outcome, but they understand that it's probably a transfer abroad. He had a quote this week where he always talks to Boca Juniors president Riquelme, and he's probably saying it in a way that I talked to Riquelme, the former Argentine international, but he's the Boca Juniors president, so he knows what he's doing when he says that out loud in an interview. Like, he's not dumb. So there's going to be that. The Botafogo leagues that we talked about. Again, I'd be super surprised. And, like, Boca Juniors just bid $3 million for Alan Velasco. They don't have the money to buy just whatever it would cost for Thiago Almada. But anyway, that's going to be something. So they can add a DP forward, a DP of any kind, but it'll be a DP forward for Giacomakis. They can add another DP no matter what because, like, once the rules officially go into place of the 3 DPs and 3 U22s, I feel overwhelmingly certain that Garth Lagerwey's view is going to be 3 senior DPs and 3 U22 initiatives. And so, again, no matter what happens with Almada, that's 2 DPs. So they're going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this summer because they're responsible for the 3 biggest transfer fees in MLS history. And I believe 4 of the top 6, depending on where Luis Araujo falls. So Atlanta, anytime they have flexibility, and with Garth Lagerwey leading this, they have to bring in a head coach. So they've got a lot of stuff to watch this summer. What they need right now, nothing opens until they can't bring new players until July 18th. Or like those players can't debut. So what they need right now is to not fall too far behind in this race. The bottom can't keep coming out so that they have more room to kind of try to claw back with a new coach and in embedding new players. And Thiago Almada's going to leave for the Olympics. So there's a lot with Atlanta United right now. Sorry, and every game they need to find a way to manufacture some semblance of points so that they're in a good spot when the window opens on July 18th and whenever they hire a new coach.
And they need to stay alive with Abram, Saba, and Schleis all in international duty at these tournaments. Saba with Georgia today. Gregerson's out with an injury. And they're going up against DC United team that's fairly healthy, not missing a ton of pieces compared to what they have. This feels like a game where Benteke can eat and cook and do whatever he wants against whoever's at center back, probably Noah Cobb, who I like as a prospect, but being a prospect and playing in a live game against Christian Benteke are two different
they just did that.
situations.
Like Benteke, absolutely. He had a hat trick against Atlanta last time they played recently, and that was Gregerson, I believe, was out that game. Like Noah Cobb started, and I think the other starting center back was Derek Williams, if not Luis Abram. But Benteke just cooked that day.
And he should probably once again here on Wednesday, which is much needed for DC United. A couple other big games this week. LA Galaxy facing off against NYCFC midweek. Payne still obviously back this week on the weekend, played about 25 minutes in a weird situation where Johnny Perez got hurt. And so the Galaxy made a sub to then fill the gap because they had a time limit on Payne still. They still got the win against SKC. Brugman's back in training, but probably not available for this game. Thiago Martin's still out, and Ilinec with the red card on Friday night. So he'll be out as well for this match for NYCFC. But two of the teams that want to play, this is as good a matchup as you're going to get in Major League Soccer, and it's going to be a ton of fun to watch this one go down. I mentioned we're going to do previews of Copa America on Thursday. It kicks off Thursday night for Canada, Sunday night for the U.S. national team. The one little news bit we want to talk about first, Tanner Tessman rumors. The report put out was that Inter Milan were looking at acquiring him and then immediately loaning him back for the year to Venezia. And then you've now helped me put together every other team in Serie A that might also be included in this conversation. Yeah,
let me start with what I assume is going to happen is I feel very strongly that there is going to be a transfer. The teams that I know that are in for Tanner Tessman, again, Inter Milan is real. You could pretty much name any of the big teams in Italy, and they at least have some semblance of interest. Obviously, some much more real than others. And I'm going to be like Inter Milan. It doesn't surprise me that they move first. But say, what happens if Napoli comes in? There's probably a better pathway to minutes at Napoli. What if somebody like a mid-table Serie A team that can promise him more, hey, you're not going to be in a relegation fight. We're not going to be challenging for the title either, but you're going to be at a bigger team, and you're probably going to play 80% of the games as long as you're decent, as we think you are. Whereas at Inter Milan, like you said, could be a loan back, or it could be you're on the bench for a lot. So that's what's interesting with me with Tanner Tessman, that I see him leaving Venezia, absolutely. If I had to guess, I think Gianluca Busio stays. But Tanner Tessman, there are a ton of teams in Italy that really, really like him.
It is. It's going to be fascinating. Olympics coming up. The expectation is he's a huge part of that. But I don't know, if you get sold to a new club and you're going to go to preseason, are you going to go to the Olympics?
And that new club can turn down the Olympic call.
Right. Yeah, that's not even a requirement because it's not
if you're Venezia too, if he's still at Venezia, hell, I'd turn it down if I was them. We just got relegated last time we were in Serie A. We need every single point. And Tanner Tessman is not a squad rotation player. He is a key constant starter that they want to sign a new contract. They want to keep. It's not like they're trying to sell him. It's because of all the interest and because of where he is with his contract. Unless he re-signs, then they have to just say acquiesce to a sale. And that's how both sides have been working together. But again, if he's still at the club in early August, I'm keeping him.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch. There's a few moves for U.S. players out there that we'll talk about, Canadian players as well. Alphonso Davies and Real Madrid just keep coming up. He's been named captain officially of the Canadian national team. This could be a special summer for him, along what has been an incredible career. And I think that's all for us here. So a full slate of Wednesday night games, which means Thursday we will be back with you live, 2 p.m. Eastern time, to cover all of that in Major League Soccer, as well as preview Copa America. It might be a 6-hour show. I'll work on trying to trim that down as we go along. And reminder, we're back tomorrow live, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, with Jordan Angeli talking NWSL. Thank you to all of you who are watching live. Thank you to all of you in the chat. Shout out to Kavincho already being anti-Boca, even though we weren't even really talking about them. Adrian being a legend, Tyler as well. Nathan Hale. Shout out to all of you that were in there. And then thank you to all of you listening via podcast. Keep sending us your messages. The Patreon is now live. We are working on setting it up so you can be a part of that mailbag, as well as we're going to start doing our extra episode once a week, our little happy hour with you as a live show for all our Patreon subscribers. We've got some bonus stuff that our back of house ghosts are working on, or whatever we're going to call them, in terms of some coverage there, working on getting our depth charts in a clean spot so that you can sort of be on those as well as you watch MLS, which is how I sit there with my computer open, my notes, my depth chart, and I watch all of the games, NWSL as well. And so I think you guys will all really, really enjoy that, as well as chatting with all of us in the Discord. This is what we do. We cover the sport in this region. Anything soccer-wise you're talking about, Soccerwise is talking about it too. And we had a really good time. I'm glad it worked this time live. I hope everyone enjoys it on podcast, and we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon. Bye, Tom.